Welcome to the Believe in Your Office podcast, sponsored by Boomerang and Common Sense Office Furniture, the podcast where we explore what makes workplaces work. Every episode features candid conversations with leaders, business professionals, and workplace experts who've been in the trenches. They share the real stories, the wins, the failures, and the lessons learned about culture, teamwork, and leadership that actually matter. Let's get into it.
Well, hello, everybody. Another episode of the Believe in Your Office podcast. Today, I have a really special guest, one of my best friends, and I guess the person responsible for me being in the industry. At the end of the day, he was the last person to interview me to get the position at Boomerang as a salesperson coming out of working in mortgages. But today, we have owner and friend and colleague Matt D. Alonso here with us on the show. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so special that I had to invite myself onto the podcast. I would have thought I would have been the first guest. Apparently not.
I know. Well, it's funny is I get those. I'm starting to get those emails and texts. They're like, what's going on? How come I haven't been on it?" And it's just,
I mean, I waited a long time before I said anything. I was going to giving you a little bit of grace.
I know. Well, my
All right.
apologies. I think that we have had so many great conversations over the years, over many different arenas and different areas. I think that it would have been best if if this was a little sooner. But now that I have a little bit more experience in this, I think it'll be good that we can really talk and break it down for everyone. But I'm glad you're finally here, and I'm glad that we're recording what we're saying, because half the time I tell people what we talk about and no one believes me.
Well, we'll keep it PG anyway.
Yeah. No, good. Two good Catholic boys here during the
During
podcast.
Lent.
So
During Lent, correct.
yeah, during Lent, right? So, all right. Well, welcome. And why don't you give us I mean, when I met you, you have a storied background in the industry, really a lot of knowledge, not only in office furniture, but commercial real estate, commercial, what's going on in the commercial world in general, and really, kind of have hit on a lot of different aspects of the business as a total. So why don't we just start with a little bit of background where you started?
Yeah. So this year, 26 July, will be my 30th year in the office furniture industry. Uh, I spent 14 of those years on the dealer side, uh, both as a dealer principal and as an executive at furniture dealerships. And I've spent the last 16 on the union office furniture installation side. So
It's been
uh,
16 years on that side?
it's 16 years, yeah,
Wow.
which is shocking to me as well. Things have, as you get a little longer in the tooth, it seems to fly by even more quickly. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to believe 30 years. I'm an elder statesman.
Well, you still look good. You still have great hair.
Well,
So,
thank you. I still have, I don't know how, honestly, but I do. I wish you that kind of success, my friend.
well, I'm trying the hair, but your hair is just a little too little too wavy for me. But no, like I said, when I first started out, I remember last interview, Matt said, "So why do you want to be in office furniture?" And I didn't know the answer to that. I don't think anyone does really, but in reality, I think what was really attractive to me was meeting new people, being able to sell to anyone. I mean, everyone sits in a chair, um, and then having something that ultimately I could own, which is where I am now, which was the ultimate goal there. But I know when you started, things were probably a little bit different than they are now. I mean, you were talking about early 2000s, right? In the
97 was I
97.
got into the business in 96. I went into business with a partner in 97.
Right. And I know you were selling a major line and going to market, and people were going to the office in a certain way in the Philadelphia market back then. Is there a major difference that you remember from then to now? I mean, there's so many changes. There's been like three really big downswings and upturns and downswings that have kind of changed everything. But is there something back then that you remember now that you're going, oh man, that doesn't happen anymore?
Well, I think, specific to our market, the Philadelphia market back in the mid 90s, we were seeing a huge resurgence. The city was really coming into its own and had some really positive leadership, and the city just seemed to be exploding. So there seemed to just be this energy that companies wanted to be in the city. So projects felt like they were, they felt like they were plentiful. They really had just a super positive trend, and we were moving through at that time. Uh, the dot-com boom was happening. There were just small startups and large startups and just, and those things before we hit our, the first bubble of my career anyway, major bubble, going into, the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s. So, that was a positive for sure. And I remember similar, you mentioned everybody sits in a chair, and that's kind of how I got to even think about office furniture. I was working for AT&T and Lucent Technologies, and they had a push to get the reps out into the field and work from home when they needed to. And I needed a chair for my home office, so I went to a friend that was in the office furniture business, and I remember asking him, "Hey, what's that cost?" He said, "That chair's $450." I almost fell out of it. $450? What? And about 6 months after that is when he invited me to have a conversation with some folks that he was involved in, and I got into furniture. So, again, I think in those days, it was probably a little bit of youthful exuberance as well, and I spent a very short period of time working in the industry before I found myself in in a principal role, and really starting a dealership from nothing, from the ground up in '97. And by about 2003, 2004, we were the largest dealer for that specific brand in a three-state area. So I mean, we had rapid growth. And
That's
and I think
awesome.
you certainly remember the stories I told you about when I used to be somebody. We were flying high. We were
Wow,
flying
you used
high.
to be somebody.
We
I know
used to
we
be.
always said I used to, how did you get into it? I wrote my mom a card when I was little and I said I want to grow up and sell cubicles. And that was that was never the truth. But yeah, no, I mean, you made some good points there. And I think that when I first started thinking about the industry, I remember one of the initial meetings, brought me into the loop with some people, and then there were some folks going to the Wing Bowl, and we had a meeting beforehand at the office, and we were talking. We were sitting around this huge table, and we're sitting at these really nice red leather chairs, and I'm going, man, these are really cool. These are nice chairs, and we were with some people that were in the industry, outside the industry, and I'm going, these are nice. Like, can I get one of these from? How much are these? They're like, they're $1,200. I'm like, $1,200. I'm going to
Exactly.
say to you, $1,200 for a chair. There's 12 of them in here. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, you guys spent $25,000 on chairs for a table? They're like, no, we didn't, but this is what big companies do.
Yeah.
And once I started to think about that, I go, okay, it's starting to make more sense. I get why you have it and the things and why they're there for different reasons for employee benefit and things like that. And then we start doing that, and the rest is history. The dot-com bubble that you mentioned is sort of like the AI introduction right now. I really think about that a lot because we talk about what changes and what we're supposed to be doing that's different in the office versus what we were doing back in 97 or 2000, 2010. And one of the main things that keeps coming up is, when the invention of the internet occurred to where it is now. I mean, AI is going to change the game. I think maybe 20 years from now, when we're having an espresso somewhere to stay awake at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
It
They'll be
probably,
like, "Oh, remember when AI came out?" And then the robot will bring our espresso over and
yeah.
say, "You guys talking about me again?" You know,
It probably won't be an espresso. Let's be very honest. But, uh,
true,
but,
true.
but yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of the Wild West, and in a relatively short period of time, we went from, as a company, having a shared email address, if you can imagine, an AOL email
Right.
address that we monitored, and we were faxing over quotes, and receiving POs, and by fax, and in a very short period of time, we had this boom of Yeah, and we didn't understand it for anything, and we certainly weren't thinking we were ever going to sell anything off of it. It was, it was so fast and so furious, and and from there, the marketing, everything from a marketing standpoint changed, and that was where, I think, I certainly didn't do a great job of it. I can tell you that, and even to this point of being on a podcast, it is something that. To embrace it back when some other folks did. I wish I would have been a little quicker on that.
Yeah.
Not that
Those
I
things
could,
don't
not that I could be as fabulous as you and run, multiple, but
Th- Well, thank you. Those things all matter, though, and I think a lot of the things that change. We just got rid of our number a year ago. I mean, we still have
mhm.
it, but no one
Well,
uses it. Everyone emails things into a fax or into a printer. But those things then changed the way that people worked in a way that, you didn't have these huge copy print rooms or
mhm.
filing rooms. Things kind of changed because everything started begin it took a long time, but everything started to kind of go more paperless. I remember my first job, the copy and printer room was like, I think, the second largest room in our office. Everyone's offices were
Mhm.
whatever, and the open space had cubicles and normal space. And then the copy and printer room was bigger than the cafe. It was, I if I had to guess, I'm thinking it was like 12 by 20, and you had, you know, filing all over the place, and you had two fax machines because if one of the lines was busy, you had another line that could get you things in. And we were working in
Yeah.
mortgages, and we were trying to lock loans, and the only way to lock loans were to fax them to the corporate office, and they would take the loan. And if you got it in with a timestamp before a certain date or before a certain time, that loan was locked under that price. If it came after that time that the change in price happened, you lost the number. And I remember having to just go crazy trying to make sure that we got everything in time. And then when the internet came out with this application where you could click a button and the loan would be locked instantly, productivity went from 50 in a day to 150 in a day, and it was a
Well,
it
and
was a
that
big
and
change.
that's really what it's all been about. It's all been about speed to market.
Hmm.
And I think that speed to market, whether it was mortgages, whether it was, companies buying, 200 shares online, or where we find ourselves now, where, you know, we're able to order, you know, coffee from Amazon and have it
Yeah.
delivered in the middle of the night.
Right.
There's this
Well,
built-in now expectation of
yep.
how quickly things can happen. And that's probably, coming out of, the late 90s through the 2000s, and into the mid 2000s to where we are today, probably one of the largest changes that I've seen. I think that what was once a process that from a sales standpoint, in not only from the dealer, but on our end, from the installation end, where we're expected to return numbers in most instances in the same day. You
Yeah.
know, you're getting these large requests to come up with pricing, and you're getting it at 9 a.m. and you're expected to have it back by the end of the day in some instances. So I think that's been the biggest change. That if I could point to anything, it
Hmm.
seems to be that decisions are made much later in the process, and folks like us are there at the tail end from the furniture sales standpoint over to the installation standpoint, are left with a much smaller time frame than what we were 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And that affects the way that you probably set up the office too, and kind of think about how you would design things. I mean, from our world, we used to draw on graph paper, and fax things over. What do you think this looks like? Go back and forth, and now it's, obviously completely automated and rendered, and everything is way different. Your your pricing and the way that you guys do things evolves based off of the way that you can get information
Hmm.
and how it's coming to you. You mentioned being able to do it very, very quickly. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I think the entire, all workforce is really based on how quick can you respond, at
Yeah,
this point. And I think that's what when we're building these infrastructures, you're going, okay, how can it become most efficient to make sure that you can do it? I think you were saying ordering coffee in the middle of the night. The craziest thing, I was just at a conference, and I don't know if I mentioned this before in the show, but now they're talking about having AI employees, and multiple people have them already. It's still a new concept, but by the end of the year, I think we may have one. They literally have their own desk, computer, phone, personality, work 24/7, 365. You can text them and you say, hey, we're out of coffee. Can you order some more coffee? And yeah, it'll be here tomorrow. Oh, by the way, can you book my flights? Yeah, we can get it done. I mean, that stuff is crazy,
yeah,
but also, makes you more efficient to be able to get to those answers that you need done within 24 hours because you don't have to do the other things that were also bogging down your time. And I think that's where if you think positively about the change instead of everything's going to take things away from me, I think it'll be good to a certain point, and then we're going to have to figure out where it kind of stops.
yeah.
If they can
I
do
would
both of
agree.
our jobs, then you and I can just golf more every week.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I'm on the back nine, so I don't want to play every day, but I
No, no,
certainly
no.
will. You know,
Well,
there's
we agree.
certainly other things that I can fill my time with, but yeah, but I mean, the AI thing, it is amazing and terrifying all in the same breath. And I mean, I just used it this morning, for instance. Somebody asked me for a quote, and and with what we do, there's thousands of different manufacturers,
Hmm.
and they have similar products, but the product doesn't go together the same,
Yeah.
doesn't ship the same. So, so I use that AI piece to kind of help me determine really what does it entail to be able to install this particular manufacturer, this particular line. The manufacturers they're all working very hard to create the next best thing. And in doing so, it's different than the last best thing. So, so we
Hmm.
need to be up on those trends, and it's coming out so fast on there, and sometimes they don't even know how quickly it goes together.
Yep.
So yeah, so
100%.
we're living in amazing times. So
Yeah, so as we said, you guys install furniture. I oftentimes say that the Philadelphia is a union town, and the union carpentry and electricians and plumbers and all the union shops are some of the most skilled laborers in the area, and we have a really solid ability to put things together efficiently, and you guys do a great job and start to finish on delivering, installing, receiving. And so
thank
what's really interesting is you're kind of an office full of workers, a lot of, we have a mixed office that I call a mixed office because we have people in the warehouse and installing and laborers. Then we have people up front, you know, doing computer work and finance and things like that. And you guys have the same setup
sure,
because you guys have so
sure.
many people that are receiving off of trucks and then going out and installing, and there's a lot of just different personalities and types. I said, what TV show or movie is like the most like your office? What if you had to
Oh,
guess?
jeez. You know, uh, I, I I say this because I just love the show. I'm not a big television guy.
All right.
Christine and I do not watch a lot of television. By just never really have. But we did recently watch Landman. So,
Oh, I love
so,
Landman. I love it.
so yeah,
That's like you guys.
so that's
So
yeah,
you're Billy Bob Thornton, is that?
yeah, Billy Bob
I could
Thornton.
see that.
Yeah.
Actually, I could see that because I could see how you could engage with certain people in the field the way that Billy Bob Thornton does.
Well, and that's why I say it, right? Because there is, there's certainly, um, and you've known me now long enough to know that I lead typically with humor.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, in my interactions with the men and women in the field, the men and women in the warehouse, the sales teams, I certainly, I certainly try to keep things, and not try to take myself too damn seriously at the same time.
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
say that just from an ability to connect
So
and
do you think that do you see yourself out in the field like Billy Bob Thornton is as much? I mean, do you think because you never see him in an office, right? But he is now, I mean, the president. If anyone hasn't watched it, then don't listen anymore. But he's the president of this oil company now, and he's just always on the land. And so that's interesting. Do you find yourselves out, you specifically in the field more than in your office?
I mean, I think I'm probably in the office more now than I was in the past. Um, but I think the reason for that is the technology, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Where we were in the field all the time. I was in the field every day, and I was visiting job sites, and the walkthroughs are still a thing.
Hmm.
We still do that. Obviously, the network piece of being out and being in the fabric of the community, that hasn't changed. We're still out there, shaking hands and kissing babies and supporting industry organizations. So those types of things haven't changed. But I have had to, just because of the sheer volume in certain instances of projects going on, that I've had to really put some responsibilities onto the field leadership to help me kind of manage all those things. So, um, but yeah, but we still very much are in the field. We're still out there, you know.
Yeah. So you're in the field a lot and you're doing all of that work. What are you seeing anything in the field when you're putting the furniture together that's creating that you're going, oh, hmm, I never thought about that, or you're seeing this more often now that
Well,
you didn't see when you
yeah, I
first
mean,
started?
yeah, I mean, there's been such a huge change um, in the style of office and workstation, where you used to have 6x6s and 6x8s and 8x8s, and those have all been,
Oh,
excuse
bless
me,
you.
they've all been replaced. I mean, everything now is a height adjustable table, and and much more in in the open areas where they're creating spaces to whether it's the pods, the phone booths, up into up through the ping pong tables and and all those things. I mean, we've built bikes where the office has bicycles that they keep out front. So all those things are much different than they were obviously 20 years ago. That just didn't happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're seeing the same. I mean, obviously, on a day-to-day basis, the changes were evident that we just had a meeting on Friday. The office manager said, "Wait, you can do height adjustable desks, and the desk can be programmed like my car seat, where it's like, you have favorites 1 and 2 where I can go up or down and just hit a button and it goes up and it goes down. It's just, oh, this is great. I could stand because my iWatch is telling me to stand. I've been sitting too long. This is just fantastic. So those things are the basic things that happen. But I agree with you. We are seeing mostly if you don't have height adjustable, there's a collaboration area where in the field that you and I are in and kind of space planning and designing and looking at plans. And that's a lot in construction and a lot in, architecture and design and just a lot of different industries. Even in my wife's industry, she's a PA and they're talking about patients and things like that. You have a spot where sometimes a informal meeting area that's a stand-up area in a space that used to be filled with just cubicles or a meeting room that was just closed off and a sitting table is now out in the open and kind of more collaborative. So it kind of helps a lot of the collaboration and build a little bit more of the culture in the office because you get more people kind of working at the same time around each other. Um, I'm trying to think of what else, did you obviously during COVID there was what did you guys do during that time period? I mean, what was that like? I mean, we're pretty much past that, but when I know it changed a lot, but when you guys were basically there was not were there more jobs because people were doing different types of projects or let's just briefly go into that a little bit on
I,
that one.
as you know, personally, from a family and company standpoint, we were very fortunate in that we happened to just have a backlog of healthcare work.
Got it.
We were doing hospitals and we were doing, laboratories, and we were doing those things that kind of allowed us to continue kind of, business as usual. We had to do a little bit of shucking and jiving because the warehouse just hit maximum capacity because there were things that just couldn't leave, and things that were on hold. And we had to take some space down the street and kind of help us through that. But we really didn't slow down more than I think we had about 3 weeks while the world was trying to figure out what this looked like and where we were going. The year following 2021 was a very, very large year revenue wise. We were at max capacity because everything kind of had caught up, and we had already had a strong backlog of work. So, it was it was complex. It was complicated. It wasn't a whole lot of fun in some instances. But
I don't think it was fun at all, really.
no, and they didn't, and there was no one, they didn't prepare us for any of those things in any of the
Yeah.
courses that you took in college. I can tell you that,
It was a
but
PhD in business for
yeah,
sure.
we thought, we lived through the dot-com bubble. We lived through the famous financial crisis of '08, and then they're like, yeah, well, watch this. I mean, so, you know, I look, I look at it from a little bit of a different perspective now than I probably would have if I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an
All right, Matt.
interesting time.
You mentioned Landman, so let's play like you get offered the president position at this oil company, and they're like, you know what, we want you to take over for Billy Bob Thornton. What is you have to have these things in your office. You got a corner office overlooking, Market Street
Oh,
downtown. What do you need in there to be like, this is how I need to work, and then when I come back to my office, I have it all here.
well, I've been in your office, and and it's landman-esque. I can tell you. Hey, you know me. I am a simple guy. And the most important thing for me is really the people that I work with. So, if I needed anything, it would be enough soft seating to be able to have all those folks that are important to me be able to come in and sit and have meaningful conversation. And I certainly, you know this about me. I've never put a piece of furniture together in my life. So I depend I depend very heavily on the men and women that I surround myself with that are out there doing the work. So that would probably be I would need a smaller desk, two monitors, large ones because I can't see like I used to be able to see, and and some large soft seating to be able to keep everybody comfortable and have that.
No, that's great. And I think that a lot of the conversation that we had based off of, each one of these is great because they're all different. But, you know, one of the main key takeaways that I have today on this is that we are very social creatures as humans, right? Even everything that we talked about was how do you have more people, just even your space? How do you get more interaction with people? You're out on the field a lot. You're not even in the office as much, but you're working around people. And I think even as AI comes to fruition a little bit more here, I think that we all have a duty as human beings to realize that nothing will replace kind of face to face and contact. And I think you and I have had a lot of those days and nights together where you just have a lot of conversation that is important for life or humans in general to communicate because you can't do it through screens like we're doing it now. Even I think it's a little bit different, things just kind of come a little bit more natural. And I think if you're now trying to design space for the future, I almost think my opinion would be don't forget about where we came from. I
Mhm.
think that if we're designing space or we're going to be building a new company or a new business that needs to go into, an office building or into an industrial park or wherever you're going, let's remember that the interaction is what's going to build the culture of the company and not just all the computers and what's happening. I think my prediction is that eventually we're going to probably pull back. I think that there'll be so much integrated technology, someone will come around and say, "Huh, how about we just get rid of this altogether and just talk?" And it'll be like this brand new idea. It'll be like, "Can you believe it? They don't
Right.
have cell phones." And you go, "What are you kidding me?" We walked, I think I talked about this before. We walked down in this conference and we're walking down the street and these two people, young people, were sitting there with typewriters. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, we'll write you any note you want. And you can give it to someone and say it was on a typewriter. And I go, holy shit. Like, are we that old
Well, and
like
you know,
that like typewriter notes are actually cool? I think that could be somewhere where we're going, quite honestly.
yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think that there is I think that there's a big piece of I have a 33-year-old and a 27-year-old, and the 33-year-old collects typewriters. She collects old cameras and she uses them, specifically for that purpose, to develop film. You know, my son was out, vintage clothes shopping. I like half my closet's, I guess, vintage, based on what he told me vintage was. But, you
You're
know,
like, you don't need to go shopping, just go over to my closet. All the stuff that doesn't fit me anymore. It's definitely vintage.
exactly. So, so yeah, I think that we will see that, and I think that there is, um, I'm hoping we're at the end of it, but I think that there is a very strong desire for people to connect on a personal level, in person, as opposed to kind of, what we see now in the digital age, which is, the Instas and the Facebooks and even the LinkedIn's.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how many times you've gone to an event or gone somewhere, and I make a point of it because I certainly appreciate when somebody would like to connect with me on these. But I can't tell you how many times I've gone up to a person who's connected with me and say hello in person, and man, they don't know what to do about that.
Yeah.
We got to get to a point where
That's when I got off of Facebook. I remember I started collecting friends very quickly on Facebook,
Mhm.
very quickly. And I was like, oh man, I haven't seen or heard from that person since, grammar school in 93. And then you go up to them and you're like, hey, and they kind of like, hi, and then walk away and go, wait a minute,
Yeah, right,
what's going on? Like we just connected on Facebook. Don't you remember me? And it's like, no,
right,
we don't want to talk. And I
right,
think that, that
exactly.
that's like the awkward part of it.
Yeah, and I've
Um,
had it, and I've had it in those instances as well as professionally. So I find that to be odd, but to your point, I think there is going to be a change in those things, and we'll figure out how to use all these wonderful technologies, and people will abuse it. We see that already. You see that on the education side, where
mhm.
teachers are just at wits' ends trying to figure out how to you know have these young folks think for themselves and create their own ideas, but I think that just like everything else, it'll sort itself out.
They actually have some classes, and my daughter was telling me over the weekend where they talk to you about not there's no reason why everyone needs to know where you are all day, every day.
Mhm.
And I tell my daughter all the time, I said, are you texting? Like, people don't need to know exactly where you are or what you're doing. As a matter of fact, when you get to be Matt and my age, you want to no one to know where you're at all. And you don't
Right.
need to know where I'm at. I kind of want to hide, not in a bad way. Just, it's like, it's not, that's also not good either. But I think as we're talking about building spaces and building culture in the office, I think remembering those things about people and creating a space where at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, the day is kind of winding down and someone has a choice to go work at home or come to the office, if you could build a space where they want to come in at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you've got a really cool space. And I
Yeah.
think that, that's tough because people ultimately don't want to be there. But I think if anyone from a business owner standpoint or space design is trying to figure that out, I think those are the things you have to keep in the
But,
back of your head.
yeah, and I
What do
think
you
as
have
leaders,
here?
yeah, and I think as leaders, we need to just express and put into our culture the importance of that interaction. I
Hmm.
get it. It's easy to just, roll into your home office and I commute anywhere from 50 minutes to 2 hours, depending on what's going on between my office in Jersey and my home in Delaware County. And I can appreciate that there's some lost time, but I think that, from a leadership perspective, if you can instill into your folks that, look, there's flexibility and there's times where it makes really good sense and will give the opportunity for you to handle the things that you need to handle in your personal life and your children and all the things that just happen that need you to be able to take time to take care of. But the interaction in the office is crucial. It's
Hmm.
really crucial. Otherwise, we get disconnected. We get completely disconnected, and we
100%.
and we don't really know ourselves the way that we think we do. So,
Yep. Well, that was great. I think I'm sorry that it took so long to get you on the show. I didn't mean to
oh,
I didn't
it's
mean to make you
fine.
wait. I think well, maybe you'll be the first two-time guest, so that way you'll get back onto the top tier of where you
Well,
consider our friendship.
I would certainly accept that invitation at any time, and
But
thank
thank
you
you for
for having me.
joining. What's that?
Thank you for having me, and
No, yeah, thanks for coming. I think again, Matt, you're the president of TPS, union installation and carpentry, basically work throughout the Philadelphia, Delaware, New Jersey market. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, is there a website that we should check out?
it's totalprojectsolutionsllc.com.
Great. Again, thanks for your time. Until the next time, as we say here, make a little noise quietly.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, pal.
Your office isn't just where work happens, it's where culture is built, ideas are born, and teams come together. And if your workspace doesn't support the people in it, everything else becomes harder. That's where Boomerang and Common Sense Office Furniture comes in, supporting communities in Orlando, Florida, the tri-state area, and everywhere in between. Boomerang and Common Sense both specialize in high-quality office, hospitality, healthcare, and educational furniture that doesn't just look good, it performs. Whether you're furnishing a growing team, redesigning for hybrid work, or just need furniture that actually works for how people collaborate, Boomerang and Common Sense make it easy and affordable. Visit boomerangofficefurniture.com to see how the right furniture can transform the way your team works.